In this week's video, we're going to be talking about a woman who is living in New York City and who has just been found guilty of taking extreme measures to try and steal her friend's identity. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. For those of you who have already subscribed, welcome back to my channel. And for those of you who are watching right now and have not yet subscribed, welcome to my channel. My name is Jen and I cover true crime cases. If you enjoy watching my videos, please don't forget to click the subscribe button and to also hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my new videos. Viktoria Nasyrova, who was living in Brooklyn, New York during the time of her crime, was also an alleged dominatrix who sometimes went by the name of Rachel or Mara. People who know her have described her to be someone who really enjoyed plush furs, meaning like plush fur coats and expensive jewelries, and just somebody who really enjoyed living that glamorous and luxurious life. However, Viktoria was also an international murder fugitive who would continue her crimes in the US after having fled her home country of Russia. Also, just a side note, there are quite a few names in here that I'm not fully familiar with the pronunciation of, so if I get any of them wrong, please forgive me and you can feel free to correct me in the comments. So Viktoria's friend and victim was a woman named Olga, and she was actually Viktoria's eyelash stylist. And the two women were friends with one another before Viktoria had tried to steal her identity and then tried to murder her. At the time of their friendship, Viktoria and Olga had bizarrely similar physical features. They both had dark hair, similar complexion, and they both spoke Russian. There were even allegations made during the trial that Viktoria had intentionally tried to befriend Olga because of their similar features, and that from the get-go, she had planned to try to steal Olga's identity. She was visiting Olga on this specific day because she had told Olga that she needed a emergency lash repair, and Olga said, yeah, no worries, come on over. So Viktoria goes over to her house and brings along with her a cheesecake as a gift for her friends. Viktoria had supposedly brought this cheesecake over as a thank you gift to her friend for helping her out with her lash situation. However, unknown to Olga, the cheesecake was laced with a powerful Russian drug called phenazepam. According to the research I did, once Viktoria entered Olga's home, she and Olga would sit down together, have a chat, and would share the cheesecake. Viktoria had 2 slices, and then she also cut Olga 1 slice and gave that to her, and Olga would eat that. I believe that Viktoria had only laced part of the cheesecake, maybe half of it, so she had cut herself 2 slices from the part that was not laced with the drug and then had cut Olga a piece from the part that was laced. When the authorities would later speak with Olga about the crime, about the situation, Olga would tell them that the cheesecake tasted just like plain cheesecake. It didn't taste like there was anything laced inside it. But about 20 minutes after eating her 1 piece of cheesecake, Olga immediately begins to feel ill. Olga is feeling so sick and nauseated that she begins to vomit all over the floor. And Viktoria, who was still in the home, would just tell Olga, oh, don't worry about it, just go lie down and I'll clean this up for you. Just don't stress about it. So Olga, who now feels super dizzy, nauseated, and just really, really ill, does go into the bedroom and lies down in her bed. However, she does remember that the last memory that she has before passing out on her bed is of Viktoria walking around her room as if she's searching for something. Olga would be found unconscious in her home a few days later by her friends and landlady. Olga's friend slash landlady said that when she had found Olga, she was laying in her bed and dressed in sexy lingerie and had all these pills scattered all around her. The temperature in Olga's bedroom was turned up to the max, and the landlady slash friend said that when she entered the room, it felt like it was a sauna in there. So at this point, Viktoria has supposedly poisoned her friend with a cheesecake that she brought over for her as a gift, stripped her friend down, dressed her in sexy lingerie, and then scattered all these pills all around her to make it look as if Olga had tried to take her own life. So when Olga's friend slash landlady finds her, she calls for help and Olga is rushed to the hospital. And when Olga arrives to the hospital and the doctors evaluate her condition, they determine that she was minutes from death when her friend found her in her bed. And when Olga eventually recovers and returns home, she's shocked to discover that her passport, her US work permit, her jewelry, and $4,000 in cash were now missing from her home. Olga quickly came to the realization that her so-called friend had poisoned her, attempted to murder her, and then stole her valuables. Viktoria was eventually arrested in March of 2017. However, here's the kicker. She was arrested for a completely different set of crimes that she had committed against completely different victims. But during that arrest, the authorities would find evidence that would link Viktoria to Olga's attempted murder, and she would eventually be charged for that as well. When the story of Viktoria's attempted murder and poisoning came out to the press and to the whole world, Viktoria would go and deny the allegations made against her. She would even go so far as to tell the New York Post that the Cheesecake situation was all a misunderstanding. She stated to the New York Post, and I quote, "The last time I saw Olga, she was already not feeling good. She said she either ate something or got food poisoning." Luckily, the prosecutors and jury would see through this deception, and this would begin the unraveling of Viktoria's dark and twisted past. Turns out, Viktoria was quite fond of using poison to get what she wanted, and Olga was not her first victim. In fact, in 2015, Interpol would issue a red notice for her arrest over the murder of a woman in 2014. Viktoria had fled Russia to the USA after she was wanted by the Russian police. Viktoria is accused of murdering her then 54-year-old neighbor, Alla Alexenko, and of stealing her life savings. Apparently, in October of 2014, Viktoria would poison Alla, and then she would drive through Western Russia with the woman's dead body propped up in the front seat of her rental car. And the slumped over body of the dead woman would be caught on traffic surveillance cameras. Alla had recently sold her mother's home and had received about $53,000 in cash from that. So the story is that Viktoria had spent months trying to befriend Alla, and then she would end up killing the woman, stealing the $53,000 that she had from the home sale, and then stealing an additional $17,000 in cash and jewelry. Alla's charred and incomplete skeleton would eventually be found by authorities buried out near Viktoria's hometown in Russia. Alla had a daughter named Nadezhda, and Nadezhda immediately suspected that Viktoria had something to do with her mother's death. Nadezhda even stated that Viktoria had even tried to befriend her for months, but they never got really close because she just knew that something was off about Viktoria. So around the time of the murder, Nadezhda wasn't living in Russia. She was actually living in New York. She had her own life there and her own little family, and I believe she is still living in New York. In a November 2015 affidavit, Nadezhda would state that Viktoria, during the period of time that Viktoria was trying to befriend Nadezhda, she had shown up in New York and had visited Nadezhda. And Nadezhda did find this weird because, again, they weren't close. This woman had first tried to befriend her mother and is now friends with her mother and is now trying to build a close relationship with her. She did find it very odd, and they never really got close at all because, as I mentioned before, Nadezhda did get a really weird sense about Viktoria. So let's backtrack a little bit to the traffic surveillance footage that caught Viktoria and Alla together in the car. Well, Viktoria and Alla's dead body. The Russian authorities had that footage in their hands, but no arrests were ever made. This was hugely upsetting to Nadezhda and her family, and she was on a mission to get justice for her mother. During one of the several conversations that Nadezhda would have with the Russian authorities, they would go and tell her that apparently Viktoria had seduced one of the lead police officers in her case, and that the investigation had been stalled by that police officer. They were basically like, yeah, sorry about that, but hey, that police officer is now fired. Unfortunately, during that stalled investigation, Viktoria would use that time to slip out of Russia using one of her many passports, and she would go and start a new life for herself in the US. Once authorities got wind of Viktoria's escape from Russia, Interpol would issue a top priority red notice for her arrest for the murder of her neighbor. For those of you who aren't familiar with what a red notice is, it is essentially a request to law enforcement globally to provisionally arrest arrest a person who is pending extradition, surrender, or is under a similar legal action. So when Viktoria arrives to the US, she decides that she's going to settle down in New York, and she would actually make the bold move of moving to the same exact neighborhood that Nadezhda was living in, Sheepsheads Bay in New York. She was hiding in plain sight of her victim's daughter and would even flaunt photos of herself on Facebook wearing these plush furs and expensive jewelry. When speaking to the Post about Viktoria, Nadezhda would state that Viktoria is a psychopath and a killer. She's extremely manipulative and very dangerous. You'd never think she's a person who could seduce you, who could drug you, who could steal from you, and furthermore kill you. Nadezhda was rightly upset about how her mother's case was handled and about the fact that her mother's killer was living in the same neighborhood as her and just flaunting her lifestyle, showing absolutely no remorse for what she had done. Nadezhda sent several pleas to immigration officers to ask them for their help, and she and her family would also eventually hire a private investigator to look into Viktoria's life in New York and to see if she could be committing more crimes while living in New York. And thank God she did, because Viktoria was finally arrested in March of 2017, and she was charged with swindling two men that she had met online. One of her alleged victims was Ruben Barukov, who recalls meeting Viktoria online on like an online dating site in July of 2016. Ruben and Viktoria had spent a little bit of time talking back and forth until they agreed that they would meet in person. So Ruben then invites her over to his apartment with hopes that they would get intimate. But when she got there, Viktoria, who at this point had told Ruben that her name was Anna, brought with her a plate of fish that she had cooked from her house. And she was very adamant with Ruben that before they could start doing anything, he needed to eat the fish that she cooked for him because otherwise it would get cold. Ruben thought that this was strange, that she was so insistent on him eating the fish, but I guess he didn't really think anything of it at the time. So he took a few bites out of the fish and shortly after would pass out. Ruben would wake up a few hours later and Viktoria was gone, and so was his $800 watch, $500 in cash, and now he also had $2,000 in credit card expenses. When Viktoria was arrested, authorities did search her apartment and they would find Olga's missing documents and jewelry there. So they were able to connect Viktoria to Olga's attempted murder. Authorities did also find Viktoria's DNA all over the cheesecake box that she had brought over to Olga's house. So that and the missing documents and jewelry gave the prosecutors enough evidence to charge Viktoria with the attempted murder of Olga. In February of 2023, in a courthouse in Queens, New York, Viktoria would be convicted of charges including attempted murder, assault, and unlawful imprisonment. She faces up to 25 years in prison when she's sentenced on March 21st, 2023. So it looks like we will need to wait another few weeks before we are able to see the results of her sentencing. I'm really happy to know that Olga survived the attempted murder and that she's made a full recovery. I hope that she is doing okay. What happened to her was horrible and must have been really traumatizing. I can imagine that it would be very difficult for her to trust anyone again. So I hope she's doing okay. As for Nadezhda, it's incredible just how much work she put into seeking justice for her mother and for what happened to her mother. I just really hope that that justice comes through during the sentencing. But honestly, 25 years in prison for somebody who has a history of murder, attempted murder, drugging people to get what she wants, and stealing from people, I think it's not enough. I think she should probably spend the rest of her life in prison because I don't think someone like that can change. I agree with Nadezhda's comment that Viktoria is manipulative and very dangerous. Again, it isn't like this is the first time she's ever done something like this. She's had multiple victims, I really honestly don't believe that she has the ability to change. Anyways, those are my thoughts, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you guys have any other case recommendations or any comments or feedback about this video, please be sure to leave them in the comments. I really do enjoy hearing from you guys and reading all of your comments. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. I really appreciate your time, and if you haven't already, please be sure to click the like and subscribe button and to hit the notification bell. It really does help my channel to grow, and it's really motivating to me, so I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you guys in my next video. Bye!